I'm really happy to be closing a phenomenal summit to discuss the challenging topic that is customer retention and churn with some phenomenal speakers. But before we kind of get into what's got planned, I think we should just run through some really quick introductions. So Ross, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Ross, and I'm the product owner for the customer feedback product within H&M Group.
Carli?
Yes, I'm Carli Glines. I was the former head of product for customer experience at Cazoo, which is an online used car buying platform.
Hi, I'm Tash. I should probably start by explaining who Zopa is, because I think compared to a lot of the brands here, people might not be so familiar with us, which is a bane of my life. But Zopa is a digital bank, and we have about 1 million customers in the UK. We offer savings, credit cards, and loans, as well as tools to help customers better manage debt and their savings. And my role is Customer Lifecycle Director, so I'm all about how do I maximise lifetime value for our customer base through engagement, retention, and ultimately cross-sell.
Amazing, thank you. And my name is Bradley. I'm Sales Director here at Chattermill, but the majority of the session will obviously be putting our speakers on the pedestal. So what I want to do to begin with is just give you a quick run through in terms of the key areas that we're going to be discussing today. So what we thought we would do is we would kick off by talking about why customer retention matters so much. It's a really great place for us to be able to set the foundations of the discussion. And then what we're going to do is we're going to transition into some more, let's say, complex topics about identifying things like churn drivers and understanding how businesses should start to prioritize to maximize business impact. So with that being said, Tasha, I come to you first. Do you want to kick us off with kind of what customer retention means to your organization?
Yeah, of course. So our ambition at Zopa is to be the UK's best digital bank. And we have kind of two pillars that sit behind that. One is we want to be the most profitable bank. At the moment, we're break even. So there's a long way to go for us in terms of growing revenue, reducing cost. And on the other side of it, we also want to have the most happy customers of any UK bank. And the way we measure that is around NPS. And currently our NPS is like 86, so it's super high. But we are really conscious that's going to become harder and harder to maintain as we scale. So yeah, retention is like really, really important, kind of underpinning both of those two pillars. So on the profitability side, obviously it's expensive to acquire customers. It's actually even more expensive for us to acquire customers than many other consumer brands. And that's because most of our customers are actually credit customers. So they're coming from a credit card or a loan. And we need to make sure that we only accept kind of high quality customers who are actually going to pay back on their loans and their credit cards, because that's how we make money. So actually acquiring a customer is hard to pick the good quality ones and also expensive. So, keeping those customers in your ecosystem once you have them is super important. Not only do you know that they've got a track record of paying back with you, but also, you're not having to kind of spend that money more than once. So that's the profitability side. And then on the NPS, kind of driving happy customers side, historically it's been quite easy for us to have happy customers because we had only one product. We started out as a loans company. But over the last few years, we've launched savings and credit cards, and they're much higher engagement, but also there's a lot more risk of things going wrong. And customer expectations are actually a lot higher than just, you get some money from a loan, you then set up direct debit, and they pay you back. They just pay back every month, and that's it. So now the kind of customer expectations we have changed a lot, and that's a really great opportunity for us to kind of build engagement and retain them and cross-sell them, but it's also a harder job for us from a customer experience point of view because there's just more to do with those customers.
Yeah, and I think it's come up a number of times today, and you just touched on it inside your response there, is that battle between customer retention versus net new acquisition. Carli, do you want to give us your perspective in terms of how those focuses differ inside your organization?
Yeah, and actually the slide behind paints it perfectly, where you can see there's a stat that, if you have, customers are more likely to repeat purchase with you at 60 to 70% chance, where new users, it's 5 to 20%. So that's great if you're an H&M, a food retailer, but if you are selling cars, which we're not buying every month, or at least I'm not, you might need that customer to come back in 3 years, 5 years, or even 10 years down the road. So retention for Cazoo is very, very challenging. So what we started to do is look at ways that we could actually not only acquire new customers, but really retain and build the lifetime value of the customers we did have, which again posed a very difficult challenge. So a bunch of us all got into the room and said, okay, when you buy a car, what else do you need? People are like, oh, you need floor mats, you might need a car seat that fits in certain cars, you might need paint protection, extended warranties. People are like, what about the big bows? When you buy it as a gift, let's sell big bows. Unfortunately, the big bows had to wait, so we don't sell those yet. But what we did do is focus on maybe a bit more profitable streams. So we looked at allowing users to book a service with us. So we know you bought a car, but what about if that car breaks down? You need to get your MOT, everything else. How can we then provide that service? We looked at how do we do extended warranties? Again, looking at how we can really make us like a one-stop shop for that user. So users not only come back to us, but they tell their friends, hey, not only did I get a car at Cazoo, but they also do service booking, extended warranty, paint protection, and hopefully bows in the future. So for us, we saw this as a really, really valuable way to like build that lifetime value of not only our current users, but then actually increase the AOV of any new users. So for us, this is how we kind of really found retention to be super valuable for us in a bit of a difficult space.
Amazing. I think that's really, there's some really interesting points in there. From a vertical perspective, was that an organic conversation that naturally happens, or have you had to kind of like force the concentration to say, we need to focus on this?
It was a bit of both, right? Because from a business perspective, we knew our core proposition was the vehicle, but we also knew that wasn't going to sustain us to profitability. So as a startup, we were going on a very exponential growth, and we were like, how can we hit profitability as quick as possible, as all companies want to do? So we knew we had to introduce other offerings. When we launched Cazoo in 2019, there were no other players in the market in the UK doing what we were doing. There was some companies in the US, but no one in the UK. So also when more competitors started coming into the market, your likes of Cinch, Auto Trader, et cetera, we knew we also had to be differentiate ourselves. So we couldn't just offer a car because all our competitors were also doing that. So we didn't want to get into the price war either, right? Because then you start eating into your profitability even more if you're just playing the price discounts. So that's why we started saying, okay, from a business perspective, we need to look at more verticals, but also from a customer perspective, you really want to provide a best-in-class service for that user. And again, that one-stop shop, so we can do everything for you.
Nice. And from startup vertical to well-established, Ross, do you want to give us a perspective from the retail side?
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, it's really different for us being in the fashion retail industry, where it's very easy for customers to be able to switch. And I think that historically we've been very focused on top line selling, transaction based. But what we looked at a couple of years ago when we tried to model out our growth targets for the next 10 years, and we looked at, because we're so established in the majority of the markets that we operate in, we realized that through that transaction focus, we wouldn't be able to reach our growth targets, especially when we looked into our customer base and saw that our top 10% most loyal customers accounted for more than 50% of our revenue. So that was a really big wake-up call for us when we realized that we had to go more from a transaction-focused mindset to a growth-focused mindset, looking into how can we activate and retain our existing customer base to be able to reach those goals in the long term.
Nice. And so if that gives us the foundations of kind of like why retention matters, if we transition or continue that conversation with you, Ross, in terms of like, how do you actually start to kind of understand those churn drivers as a whole, or maybe even those retention levers?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think it ties into something that Mikhail and Dimitri mentioned right at the beginning of the day when they talked about being able to break down those data silos. I mean, we're a long-established company, so you've been working in silos for a long time, and it's been quite a challenge for us to be able to connect the dots when it comes to transactional data over here, customer service data over here, behavioral data and feedback data. So that's been a really big thing for us, and Chattermill's really helped us to be able to do that. It comes back to the storytelling question again, but we've really tried to look at the different phases of the customer journey and then orient the feedback based on those different phases to be able to identify where are the real pain points sticking out, and that can be different for different customer cohorts. And one specific example that I can give is a couple of years ago, we were looking into a really big spike in negative sentiment in the Canadian market. And when we broke that down over the different phases of the customer journey, we saw that the majority of the markets had pretty positive sentiment when it came to returns. We had a pretty smooth return journey, but in Canada, it was a really big problem for us, and it was driving a lot of churn. And we realized that the simple fact was that the majority of customers wanted to be able to return online purchases in store. And that was something that we were in the process of rolling out, but we had a pretty arbitrary rollout process market by market, and we were really easily be able to adjust that rollout process, push Canada up the priority list, and it had a pretty immediate impact on the overall CX in that market, which gave us the sales growth that we were looking for in Canada.
Amazing. And the piece that you said there in terms of like just push that up the priority list, you made that sound really easy and simple. And I think a lot of people have asked questions today about like, how do you get the airtime? How do you prioritize? So what does that process look like for you?
It's a lot of hard work. I think, but I think that breaking down those data silos is a really key element to be able to get there, because I think you need to be able to tell the story to the key decision makers, your C-suite, and the ones who are going to work operationally with the data. You need to turn CX from a nice to have into a need to have. And the way that we did that was to try to connect it then to those operational and behavioral metrics to be able to give a tangible impact on what does the increase from X to Y in terms of NPS or share of promoters do to you in terms of future selling. And for us, when we did some analysis into that, we saw that the increase, if you looked at the promoters versus detractors, we did some analysis on their subsequent 12-month purchase behavior, and we saw that even our months of detractors, they were likely to purchase with us again maybe once in the subsequent 12 months, but the promoters were purchasing more than 9 times within the subsequent 12 months with approximately same order value. So that was a really easy, once we were able to do that, we were able to make the case much easier on the value of CX.
Nice. Okay. And Tasha, I know that you have a diverse range of data sources and channels and key metrics. So from your perspective, how do you start to kind of identify what those churn drivers are?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, I guess I kind of alluded to the fact that Zopa's been kind of through quite a big growth journey, going from kind of like a single product to multi-product. And I think, historically, similar to kind of H&M, it sounds like we were working in kind of silos. So the product teams were very empowered to kind of, go away and really care about your customers. I think when you're a small company, it's really easy to maintain those really close relationships with your customer service team lead or kind of relevant kind of ops contact. So we used to kind of just let the teams all get on with it. And then I think it got to the stage where as the business grows and kind of you've got more people, you can't rely on kind of like so-and-so I worked with for 3 years kind of going past me in the corridor so I can just kind of grab them for 5 minutes. We felt the need to kind of centralize a lot of this and actually kind of standardize a lot of the data capture. And I think similar journey to you, we've kind of, worked very hard to bring together all these different data sources that we have. Everything kind of from like social data, kind of reviews, as well as, ops data. So linking back things like cost to serve, to kind of customer experience outcomes, CSAT outcomes. And then we've created these kind of forums with a kind of voice of customer role, and every month, go through kind of the key actions that have come out of that, like what progress has been made in the product world to kind of help address some of these pain points. And I think for us, it's been a big investment for our company to kind of build out my team. My team is a cross-functional team, so I have, product people and engineers and designers, so we're actually able to solve some of the problems ourselves as well as rely on the business to kind of influence them. And I think that's been really important in terms of actually being able to make the change off the back of the data that we've seen.
How difficult is the battle to get that resource then, or get the foundations in terms of what you've got now?
I don't know. I wouldn't say. I don't know. Maybe I'm just quite lucky. It's not really felt like a battle, because I think we've realized it's just really, because we do have the data, and you can see in this particular area, we've got like a new product launch into kind of say, we're doing balance transfers and credit cards, and we're talking about scaling that to become like 30% share of our acquisition this year, and yet it's driving like huge amounts of contact into our call center, and then anyone who's kind of commercially minded is going to say, actually, we can't scale it until we fix that. Yeah. And by fixing that, you also fix a lot of the kind of detractor comments as well. So I guess you can create these kind of win-win situations, which is kind of what's been helpful for me.
Yeah, okay. And Carli, as a vertical that views retention and churn through maybe a different lens, do you want to give your perspective in terms of how you establish that prioritization?
Yeah, so again, at Cazoo, we have a very different challenge than to the likes of H&M where, we have one of each piece of inventory. So say you're on the site, you're like, I really want a red Audi and I want a, 2020 and newer. Well, if someone bought that the day before, you're out of luck. But then again, we've spent a large amount of money to acquire you as a customer, drove you to our site, we gave you a seamless journey, but then we don't actually have the product you're looking for. So most likely we're gonna lose you as a customer, you'll go to Singe, and so now it's a lost sale for us. So we had, again, a very interesting challenge we needed to solve, or I guess I should say opportunity to address. And so basically what we did is we started using a lot of our qualitative and quantitative data. Again, the data is always your best friend, right? What is it telling us? So we went to our customer service agents who were saying, customers are calling us saying, we want to buy with Cazoo, we love your proposition, but you don't have what I'm looking for. We were getting, customer surveys saying the same thing. We were having even Trustpilot people, saying, I wanted to buy, I couldn't find what I was looking for. Or, I was going through checkout, I had to go talk to my bank, and then the car was gone, which is, again, a poor customer experience. So what we said is, why don't we actually let our customers tell us what they want? So we just injected stock alerts into the website. So basically saying, okay, you're looking for a red Audi, no older than 2020. So not only did it start to tell us more information about what our customer base were looking for, so give us more insight, but it was also letting us grow our marketable customer base, right? Because you have to give us your email, we store that email, we start creating a customer base, which then we can start having that conversation with you, build that dialogue, and then retain you as a customer. So instead of you going over to Cinch and buying your red Audi with them, we can be like, hey, wait, Jane, we found your, red Audi. It might not be the one with 50,000 miles, but it might have 55,000, but it meets, the rest of your criteria. So we found this way of retaining they weren't customers because they hadn't purchased yet, but they were already traffic we had spent money to acquire. So it was kind of a different way of looking at retention for us. And why this was so successful for us is because we knew these customers that were providing their email addresses and interacting with us, they were already more interested in us, so they were more committed. And what we saw is actually the conversion rate from customers that signed up for stock alerts was more than 2% of the site average conversion rate. And that sounds low, but when it's a high price point item, your conversion rate is going to just be at a lower percentage point than fast fashion retail, or I always use Starbucks. It's my favorite thing. I buy it every day. But so basically, we also saw that it helped us grow our marketable base by 30%, because again, customers are willingly giving you their email, where a lot of times we see those pop-ups like, oh, would you like to sign up? You'll get 10% off. 10% off on a car isn't going to motivate someone to give you their email address all the time, especially if they're looking at a Range Rover or something. So for us, we had to just find different ways to really motivate those customers to provide their information for us to continue that communication with them.
Yeah, we have a similar example actually. I mentioned at the beginning, there's often an issue where our products are not always addressable for all of the customers who might want it. So instead of just saying no to those customers, what we do is we funnel them into a journey, into a tool called Borrowing Power, which is basically looking at your credit score, but in the context of your eligibility for a product at Zopa. So it suggests basically actions you can do to improve your, your credit health and your financial health, to then help you on that journey to get not only just access to those products, but also lower rates and better terms. And that's become really, really powerful for us in terms of driving acquisition volumes and we're seeing about 55% of customers actually improve their credit score over a 6-month period by following those actions and sticking with us, and ultimately they become customers of the future as well for us.
The final area that we wanted to touch on was about business prioritization. I think there's been lots of talking points today about referencing business outcomes. How do we connect CX to the revenue drivers? So this is typically probably one of the most complex topics that's discussed. Ross, do you want to kick us off and give us your perspective or any stories around how you're able to actually maximize business outputs from the prioritization work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned a little bit earlier the work that we did to be able to connect NPS to something tangible in terms of future buying behavior. And I think that was really crucial for us to build the buy-in amongst the key stakeholders. So then we got the moving of the CX from the nice to have to the need to have. But I guess that we created a problem for ourselves, and that was based on our high-level relationship survey that we did. And then you have operational leaders on store level or an area level or a country level saying, okay, we want more data, we want more data. So then the next layer for us in terms of our VOC program was to then implement listening points at touch point level. So we used the relationship survey to prioritize, okay, customers are talking about products most often, which is not too surprising. We've got a bunch of product review data that we are only really using for the purposes of conversion. We're not really analyzing the open text feedback. We then connected that to Chattermill, and it gave us a lot of opportunities to look at how can we actually improve products, how can we reduce return rate, how can we push conversion even further by identifying improvement areas in the different products that we have. And then we also looked at, okay, let's implement touchpoint surveys after customers shop, after customers receive a delivery, after customers initiate a return, because that then allowed us to feed those operational teams who really wanted now to take action on CX with granular level data that they could do something with. Because I think on a general level, one thing I've really found is that the benefit of CX is to be able to integrate with other behavioral and transactional metrics, to have that 360 view of the customer, to allow different teams to work together as opposed to working towards their own internal metrics. Because everybody knows, I think, that you as an individual, you're going to focus on what you're being followed up on. So if you are in the sales organization and you're being followed up on selling more than last year, then you are not going to think twice about pushing a sale into production, even if that means it's going to overload your warehouse, which is going to mean that you're not going to be able to fulfill all your deliveries, and your customer service organization is going to be overrun with contacts that they can't handle, which can lead to churn. So I think having that unified 360 view of the customer is really key. But then, as I say, the big thing for us is we needed to set up those listening points to get the granular data into the hands of the teams that were going to work operationally with them.
Nice. And when you talk about those, you talk about omni-channel, 360 views, lots of different touch points. Is there any element of prioritization across those data sources? Are they all viewed as equal? Like, what's the lens that you look at them through?
I think it's for us, we've gone through a process of regionalization, so it's going to be different in different regions, and we've tried to put rather than sit from a central level and dictate. Like I say, the return situation in Canada was really important for them. It wasn't important for any other markets. So being able to decentralized, I think, is really key here, because you're going to have different needs and different priorities when you get down to that granular level, depending on the region. But again, I think it comes back for me into being able to connect that into the business impact of an increase in NPS. So if you can see, for example, through the impact analysis in Chattermill, you can see that in this particular customer cohort, delivery is the thing that's negatively impacting the NPS most, then it's a pretty obvious step for you to focus on delivery and so on. But yeah, I mean, decentralizing that, I think, is key for a big organization like us, where the priorities will be really different depending on the location. Yeah.
And Carli, I come to you with the very similar question in terms of prioritizing to maximize business outputs. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think any product managers in the room know that prioritization is probably the first question you're asked in like every job interview. And it's always the hardest to answer, I believe, in interviews, but also it's one of the most challenging things to do at your job a lot of times, because we all probably know you have a ton of business stakeholders all screaming and shouting for your resources to focus on, their requests at the same time. So how I kind of manage prioritization at Cazoo in terms of, all the business needs and objectives is really kind of what were our goals that, quarter or annually. And so, one good example was one quarter, Cazoo was really looking to reduce their cost of customer acquisition cost, or I'll probably call it CAC, but still grow our customer base. So when we launched in 2019, like I said previously, there was no other brands like us in the market. We were unknown. So we were spending an insane amount of money to get our brand out there, get people, confident in us, because people are like, you want me to buy a car unseen, untest driven, you're out of your mind, right? So we spent a lot of money to try to educate our customers like, no, we're reputable, we're not gonna sell you a lemon, But then our CAC was just outrageous, and we were like, this isn't sustainable. So how can we bring our CAC down, but also, continue to grow our customers? And so we actually looked at how we could approach this in two ways. So not only a retention play, but also an acquisition play. which was really just looking at a referral program. And again, I'm sure a lot of, if you work in retail or you shop, you see a referral program is nothing new. But again, when you're talking about referring someone for a vehicle, that person's confidence in you has to be that much higher for me to go tell my friend, go spend 10 grand at this company because I had a great experience, right? So again, we had to do a lot of work to say, okay, you wrote us a 5-star Trustpilot review, and you loved us, will you go refer your friend? And if so, we can then offer you, X discount on your next car. So again, increasing that lifetime value of that customer, because they might not come back to us for 3-5 years, but if they're debating between us or Cinch, and we've already given them a certain amount of voucher or some incentive, they're gonna come back to Cazoo. So again, strong retention play, but then also we're acquiring a new customer at a much, much lower cost than all of our other marketing activities. So television, radio, sponsorship. If you've gone to any sporting event in the UK in the last 3 years, you probably have seen Cazoo somewhere on some team, because I think we sponsored every single sport. So again, though, very, very expensive. At one point, we were sponsoring 2 Premier League teams, and that's just 2 Premier Football Leagues, and that's just outrageous, right? So what we said, if we actually implement this referral program, we could reduce our CAC, our customer acquisition cost, by 80-85%, because again, it's a bit more word of mouth, right? We're not splashing ourselves all over TV, so we might not reach as wide of an audience as, say, television or radio will. But again, if I'm telling, my sister, hey, I bought this car and I loved it, she's already has that confidence. The brand's not having to build that confidence and do all that work. The word of mouth from a friend or a family member did it for us. So for us, this was identified as like a really, really big opportunity. But again, we prioritized it based off of what the company's objectives were at that time. So this hasn't seen the light of day yet, but I thought it was just a really great example of how we kind of utilized, what was going on in the business like atmosphere, and also how we could kind of both do retention plays and customer acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really compelling story, especially when we're going through a phase where people are looking to consolidate on budgets, look at how they optimize, and sometimes it's not always obvious how the two connect together. So Tasha, I come back to you close. From a financial perspective, are there stories, examples that you've got around that prioritization piece?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it comes back to one of the principles I talked about before, which is we build products where we win and our customers win at the same time, which I think everyone says, but I think in financial services, the cost of getting it wrong and the impact on your customers if you get it wrong is much greater in terms of the potential kind of financial detriment you could cause or negative outcomes you could have. So for us, that's kind of always got to be at the center of what we do. Like, it has to be driving a positive customer outcome, and we have to kind of monitor that closely. So an example I've got is we speak to our customers a lot, and they tell us that particularly the fact that we offer savings products and debt products, they want to know how can they save money on the cost of their debt and pay it off quicker and get out of debt more quickly. And they want to know how they can build better savings habits and basically save more money. So kind of looking at those customer needs, and then also kind of looking at some of the data on our side. For example, we know that we have some of the most competitive rates in the market. And we have an NPS of 86. But yet we know also that we only have about 30-40% share of wallet in terms of personal loans with our customer base. So we see there's a massive opportunity for our customers basically to doing more with us than they do today. So it led us to kind of build a tool which is called the Debt Consolidation Calculator, which basically allows customers to see whether they can save on their cost of debt by moving their loan over to Zopa. And so, soft credit search, no kind of hard checks on your file. You can see, pick which loans or credit products you want to consolidate, and you can see what, you might save in terms of like monthly cost, total cost. You might be able to pay off your loan quicker. And so we launched this feature to customers, and we've had really good success. So the average saving we see per customer going through this tool is about £600, and on average they're paying off their debt 15 months quicker than they would have if they'd stuck with their original products. So yeah, really great customer outcome, but also driving increased share of wallet for Zopa, which obviously helps with our kind of profitability goal as well. So that's the kind of example of how we kind of prioritize.
Nice. And out of curiosity, when it comes to a story like that, what are the success metrics that you pin to it at the end?
We look at a lot of different things. So obviously looking at like the whole conversion funnel, like how much traffic we're getting in at the top, kind of where people are dropping out, and then looking at kind of actually the total kind of volumes of new loans that we dispersed off the back of that versus what we were doing before. Like, you need to check you're not just cannibalizing your existing customers who were already looking to reborrow or renew a kind of product with you. So yeah, we always look at the kind of the delta between the kind of baseline and where we've got to.
Nice, amazing. So we are closing out on the final section here. I want to open it to all three of you if there's anything else that you want to add before we move into the open Q&A. Cool, awesome. I think it's audience. Are there any questions? I think Aaron's now coming with the mic.
There we go. I've got it.
Aaron, there was a question just at the front. This gentleman just here, if you want to go the audience first.
Thank you. Thank you. Great conversation. I'm Eugene from Holland and Barrett. So not a question, but just add to the top, because currently Holland Barrett, we are going through digital transformation. And it's very traditional business, right? Like 150 years old. And basically, we are very heavily retail-driven and transactional-driven business. And currently, for the past 1 year and a half, which I'm in the company, we are trying to shift this mindset, especially starting from execs level and on our retail business, with our supply chain, just to think about customers more, to think about retention, because currently we have basically, this phrase as penny sale, and most of our customers knows Holland Barrett is penny sale. However, we are going to wellness partner direction, where we are not we don't want to be just to selling vitamins and supplements, but we want to enhance the experience, wellness experience, provide articles, use your application and your phone as a health tracker, etc. So it's a very long journey and hard journey for us, but definitely the retention. And for the past half a year, I think our execs, even the very, very traditional ones, understood that customer experience is very important, and we need to go to this retention direction, going from conversion rates to more to LTV, customer lifetime value, basically metrics. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a great topic to discuss. Yep, thank you.
Amazing, awesome, thank you. Aaron, are there any questions in the audience? If not, we'll go to some of the online.
Okay, let me move across. Question from Daniel. Should you aim for retention levels that are better than your competitors, or should you try to eclipse industry averages?
I think it's important to benchmark yourselves in some ways against competitors, but from our perspective, I think we're really trying to focus on ourselves, and we've got growth targets that we're aiming for, and we know what retention levels we need to hit to reach those. So I think from our perspective, it's more about, again, it's going back to what kind of operational metrics you set for yourselves. I think we've got specific metrics that we look at for different teams on an operational level, and we are pretty confident based on the historic data that we've got. If we hit those, then we'll hit the retention levels that we're aiming for, and then that's going to give us the market share that we need. So I think it's, for us, I guess it's different in different industries, but I would say if you've got retention levels that you're aiming for yourself, then focus on that.
Just to add in, I think we've tried to get quite a lot of data and insight on cross-sell penetration for our competitors, but it's quite hard to get that information in a kind of reliable way. And we've got kind of sound bites and anecdotes, and we have used that to kind of set our own targets, because we're recognizing that we're coming from a standing start, because we used to only have one product, so there wasn't really even that option. But yeah, I think it's, in our industry, everyone's got kind of slightly different product sets, and so it's quite hard to really completely compare yourself. So yeah, I agree, kind of setting your own kind of North Star is really important.
Aaron, another question?
Yeah. So from Nicola, what's the best way of analysing customer feedback to find out what's driving retention?
I mean, that's kind of an interesting question because, right, you can get a lot of feedback from your customers where they're literally just telling you. So like I mentioned Trustpilot. So at Cazoo, we heavily look at everything that people are saying on Trustpilot, and we actually have alerts when we get 1 or 2 stars. So everyone gets emailed actually in the company up to our C-suite if we get a 1 or 2, because we want to address those ASAP, and we also want to learn from our mistakes. So we actually take customer feedback very seriously. Obviously, we love the 5 and 4 stars, but again, we actually pay more attention to the negative reviews and the negative feedback, because that's where you can actually learn. So for me, I think it's, analyzing both sets of data, positive and negative.
Yeah, I agree with that on an overall level, but I also think it's useful to be able to learn from your promoters as well as from your detractors. And I think especially if you, for us at least anyway, the majority of the data that we get in terms of customer feedback is skewed towards those more loyal customers who are more likely to engage with that kind of feedback anyway. And I think if you're able to segment your feedback data, looking at whatever kind of CRM metrics that you've got, I do think there's a lot of value in being able to understand what are your promoters telling you. And I think good for you guys for me to say, I think Chattermill really helps us with that, because we've set up our NPS survey in such a way where we're asking customers what prompted them to give the score that they did. So you've got a really easy way then using the Chattermill tool to say, what are our promoters actually telling us?
Tash, anything you want to add?
No, I think the only thing I would build is just on the piece around, there's always the more noisy customers and then the ones who just kind of get on with it. And, and I think it's quite, you can sometimes over-index onto the kind of the minority who are making the most noise. So I think it's all about, diversifying data sources and trying to get that balanced view. I think one thing that we've done that's been really helpful is we've introduced a kind of customer segmentation, and actually putting that lens on top of a lot of the kind of NPS outcomes that we see through the customer lifecycle has actually given us loads of really interesting insights around, a customer who we've identified as financially stable at this stage in their life cycle has a very different kind of NPS on average versus a customer who's maybe in more of the kind of struggling kind of financial segments. And that's actually really helped us to kind of drive out differentiation in the customer journey that we're offering to those different groups of customers. And I think, we're starting to see some kind of positive changes and movements off the back of that.
I think we're at time, yeah? Cool, amazing. Well, thank you so much for our speakers, and back to you, Fraser.